Imagine raising someone, loving them like your own child, only to have them betray you in the most humiliating way possible. My own grandson crashed my car, fled the scene of the accident, and then tried to pin the blame on me. But what he didn't expect was that I'd fight back and that karma would be brutal. Let me take you back to how it all began. I'm not rich. I'm a retired woman in my 70s, living off my pension. My little pleasures in life are my flower garden, Sunday lunches with family, and occasionally taking my small, reliable car for groceries or church. That car, it wasn't luxury, but it was mine, paid with years of honest work. It symbolized my independence, my ability to still do things for myself. And then came the day everything changed. It was an ordinary morning, birds chirping, sun shining. I remember making tea in my little kitchen when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my grandson, Lucas. He's 20, restless, always chasing the next thrill. I love him. I've loved him since the day he was born. But truth be told, Lucas had been drifting down a reckless path, dropped out of college, friends I didn't approve of, late-night parties. But every time I saw him, I told myself, he's young, he'll find his way. That morning, Lucas asked if he could borrow my car. His excuse? He needed to run errands for a job interview. Against my better judgment, I said yes. I remember handing him the keys. His grin was casual, confident. Thanks, Grandma. I'll be careful. Hours passed. No messages. No updates. I brushed it off at first. Maybe the interview was running long. But then, around 4 p.m., I got the call. It wasn't Lucas. It was the police. There's been a traffic accident involving your car, ma'am. My heart dropped. I felt cold, my fingers trembling as I clutched the phone tighter. They told me the car had been found abandoned near the outskirts of town, crashed against a metal barrier, no injuries reported, thank God. But the driver? Gone, fled the scene. I could barely process the words. But my grandson was driving. There was silence on the line. Then the officer asked calmly, "Ma'am, your car's registration is under your name. Can you explain where you were earlier today?" I stuttered, confused. "At home, drinking tea. I'm 72. Why would I flee an accident?" The officer sighed. "We'll need a statement." The humiliation I felt, words can't describe it. The idea that I, a woman who never even received a parking ticket, was now treated like a possible suspect. My own grandson had caused a crash and ran, leaving me to deal with the consequences. It got worse. When I finally reached Lucas, after endless attempts, he answered as if nothing had happened. "Grandma? Oh, yeah. Listen, something happened with the car. I was going to tell you." His voice was casual, detached. I demanded answers. "Lucas, where are you? What happened?" Silence. Then, his reply shattered me. "Look, if anyone asks, just say you were driving. You're old. People will believe you got confused. I can't get in trouble for this. Please." My stomach turned. I felt like vomiting. My own flesh and blood, asking me to lie, to take the blame. I didn't recognize him anymore. At that moment, something shifted inside me. A cold, sharp clarity replaced my confusion. I realized I'd spent years forgiving Lucas, excusing his behavior, blaming his mistakes on youth or bad friends. But this was betrayal. He wasn't just irresponsible. He was willing to let me, his grandmother, carry the burden of his crime. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying his words in my mind. I thought of every sacrifice I'd made for him, the birthdays, the Christmases, the quiet moments where I brushed his hair from his forehead as a child, telling him he was loved. Now, he wanted me to lie, to protect him. And the worst part? A small, broken part of me almost considered it. That's what unconditional love does. It blinds you. But then, I remembered something my late husband used to say. Real love doesn't mean covering for someone's lies. It means helping them face the truth. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be his scapegoat. I was going to fight back. And so, I gathered every message, every call log. I went to the police station myself, trembling hands, aching knees, but a clear mind. I told them the truth, everything. That's when the real story began. Because Lucas thought he'd gotten away, but he didn't know. I was about to teach him the lesson of a lifetime. Walking into that police station felt like walking into battle. I could feel every gaze on me as I stepped inside. An old woman, clutching a worn handbag, hands trembling, Not from age, but from heartbreak. I wasn't there to report a stolen purse. I was there to report my own grandson. And that reality, it cut deeper than any physical wound ever could. The officer at the desk looked at me kindly. "Ma'am, how can we help you today?" I hesitated for half a second. Then, with more strength than I thought I had, I said it out loud. "I'm here to report my grandson. He crashed my car. He fled the scene. And now, he's trying to blame me." Saying those words felt like ripping off a bandage. The pain hit immediately, but so did a strange relief. For the first time, I wasn't covering for him. I was facing the truth. The next 2 hours were a blur of questions. The officers took my statement, recorded the timeline, and examined the texts on my phone, the proof that Lucas had borrowed my car that morning. I handed them the call logs, showing my desperate attempts to reach him after the crash. When they asked if I had any witnesses, I felt embarrassed. "No," I whispered. "It was just me at home." I could see the sympathy in the officer's eyes, but this wasn't about pity. It was about facts. Before I left, the officer assured me, "Don't worry, ma'am. We'll investigate this properly." But part of me wondered, would they? Would anyone truly believe a grandmother over a 20-year-old who'd probably spin a convincing story? Lucas was charming. He always had been. He could lie with the ease of breathing. That night, I didn't sleep again. Every creak of the house, every passing car outside, I felt trapped inside my own mind, second-guessing everything. Had I done the right thing? Would Lucas hate me forever? Was I destroying my family? And yet, beneath all that fear, was a quiet voice, steady and firm. He chose this. I remembered his voice, casual, unbothered, asking me to lie for him like it was nothing. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. A week passed. I heard nothing. No calls from Lucas, no updates from the police. Every day felt like a year. Then, one morning, there was a knock at my door. 2 officers stood there, solemn. "Ma'am, we've located your grandson." My knees almost buckled. They explained what happened. Lucas, as expected, had tried to lie. He'd told them he wasn't involved, that maybe I'd forgotten who was driving, using my age as a convenient excuse. He played the victim. But what he didn't expect was evidence, CCTV footage, from a gas station near the crash site. There it was, Lucas, in broad daylight, fueling my car, clear as day. And moments later, that same footage showed him speeding off recklessly in the direction of the eventual crash. The officers had also found traffic cameras catching the exact car, my license plate, registered in my name, veering off the road near the barrier where it was later abandoned. When confronted with the footage, Lucas cracked. He confessed everything. But what broke me was hearing what he said. He told them he fled because he panicked, that he feared ruining his life if charged with fleeing an accident, and that blaming me seemed easier. Throwing me under the bus, his grandmother, was easier for him. I felt like someone had driven a knife straight through my heart. But then, something else happened. The officer, a younger man with kind eyes, looked me straight in the eye and said words I'll never forget. "You did the right thing, ma'am. We don't often see people this brave." Brave. I never saw myself as brave. Just tired. Tired of forgiving someone who didn't deserve it anymore. Now Lucas was facing charges, not just for reckless driving and fleeing the scene, but for attempting to obstruct the investigation. I thought that would be the end. But life had one more cruel twist, because that's when my daughter, Lucas's mother, called me. And instead of asking if I was okay, she screamed, "Mom, how could you do this to him? He's your grandson. Family doesn't betray family." That sentence, family doesn't betray family. I laughed. I actually laughed through the tears. "Tell that to your son," I said. "He's the one who betrayed me." She hung up. I sat in silence for hours after that call. I felt empty. I had lost my grandson, and now, my daughter too. All because I refused to take the blame for a crime I didn't commit. But then, a strange peace washed over me, because for the first time in years, I had chosen myself. I had chosen the truth, even if it meant standing alone. And deep down, I knew karma wasn't finished with Lucas yet, because facing the law was only the beginning. Soon, he'd face something far worse, facing himself. The days that followed were painfully quiet. No one called. No one came by. It was as if I'd been cut off from my own family, exiled for daring to tell the truth. But strangely, I didn't feel regret. Not anymore. I spent my mornings sipping coffee by the window, watching the street where Lucas once played as a little boy. I remembered his laughter, his tiny hands gripping mine. That child, the one I helped raise, he was gone. And yet, the silence around me wasn't empty. It felt like justice settling in. A week later, the detective called again. "Ma'am, Lucas accepted a plea deal." I closed my eyes. My hands gripped the phone so tight, my knuckles turned white. "What does that mean?" The officer explained everything. Lucas had pleaded guilty to multiple charges: reckless driving, fleeing the scene, and filing a false report. Because it was his first offense, he wasn't going to prison. But he wasn't getting away free either. He'd lost his license indefinitely. Thousands of dollars in fines, mandatory driving courses, community service. And worst of all, for Lucas anyway, he now had a criminal record, a permanent stain. The boy who once dreamed of making it big now had a record that would haunt him every time he applied for a job, for years to come. The weight of that hit me harder than I expected. I didn't want him destroyed. I just wanted him to learn. But karma doesn't ask for your permission. It just arrives. I thanked the officer, hung up the phone, and sat there in silence. I wondered if Lucas hated me. But then, a thought crossed my mind. Maybe hating me was easier than facing the truth. That night, sleep finally found me. Deep, dreamless sleep. For the first time since the accident, I felt peace. But the story wasn't over. 2 weeks after Lucas's sentencing, he showed up at my door. I saw him through the window. He looked smaller, not just thinner, not just tired, but broken. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to lock the door, pretend I wasn't home. But then I remembered the boy he used to be. I opened it. For a moment, we just stood there in silence. Then he spoke. "I'm sorry, Grandma." Just 3 words. But they didn't heal me. They didn't undo the betrayal. They didn't erase the fact that he had tried to sacrifice me to save himself. I said nothing. Lucas's eyes filled with tears. "I messed up, I know, I panicked. I thought if I lied, I could make it go away." I looked at him. For the first time, I didn't see the boy I raised. I saw a young man who had to face consequences. I stepped aside. "Come in." He sat in the same kitchen chair he'd sat in as a child, eating cookies, telling me stories about school. But now he was silent. Eventually, I asked him the one question that haunted me. "Did you think I'd cover for you?" Lucas swallowed hard. "I didn't think. I just hoped." That was the moment I understood. He wasn't evil. He wasn't heartless. He was weak. And weakness can make people cruel. I made him tea. We talked for hours, not about the accident, but about life, about choices, about the boy I once knew, and the man I hoped he'd become. I didn't forgive him that day. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a door you unlock, slowly, when you're ready. But I let him see that door. Before he left, he looked at me and said something I'll never forget. I deserved what happened, all of it. I watched him walk away, unsure if I'd ever see him again. But I knew one thing. Justice had been served, not just by the courts, but by life itself. Lucas wasn't the same, and neither was I. What he didn't know was that I was still fighting one final battle, because somewhere out there, his mother, my own daughter, still blamed me. She hadn't called, not once, and that hurt more than anything Lucas had done, because betrayal from a grandson is painful. But betrayal from your own child? That's a wound that never truly heals. But like all wounds, you learn to live with the scar. And scars, they're proof that you survived. Weeks passed after Lucas's visit. Life moved forward, as life always does. The dust had settled. The courtroom battles were over. The accusations, the lies, the chaos, all of it was behind me. But inside, something still felt hollow. People think that when justice is served, when karma strikes, the pain disappears. But it doesn't. Justice isn't healing. It's simply balance restored. I went about my days, quiet mornings, slow evenings, a life that once felt full, now strangely empty. And still, no word from my daughter. That hurt in ways I couldn't explain. I remembered holding her as a baby, brushing her hair, telling her bedtime stories. I thought raising a child meant building an unbreakable bond. But betrayal shows you otherwise. In many ways, that betrayal cuts deeper than anything Lucas did. Because he was just a boy who panicked. But she chose silence. She chose absence. And when your own child abandons you, after decades of love, you begin to question everything. What was it all for? I could have crumbled, but instead, I adapted. Pain teaches you to be strong. I joined a community group, found friends in unexpected places, people who listened, not because they knew me, but because they understood what it meant to hurt. I rebuilt slowly, brick by brick. One morning, as I tended to my small garden, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Lucas, again, but this time, he didn't look like a boy seeking forgiveness. He looked like a man carrying guilt. "Grandma," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." I stood still. I told Mom the truth. I turned. "She knows you didn't lie. She knows I did." I felt my heart stop. "And? She doesn't care." Those words hit harder than anything else. She didn't care. She chose her version of reality over the truth. Lucas watched my face, tears brimming in his own eyes. I thought telling her would fix it. I thought maybe she'd come back, maybe she'd apologize, but she said, "I'm just covering for you." I said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. In that moment, I realized something brutal. Some people choose the lie because it's easier than admitting they were wrong. I thanked Lucas for telling me, and I watched him walk away again. But this time, my heart didn't ache as much. Why? Because I finally understood. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong. I was simply the casualty of someone else's fear of truth. From that day forward, I let go. Not of Lucas, not of my daughter, but of the weight of their choices. Their betrayal was theirs to carry, not mine. And that was the final revenge, living free of the guilt they tried to bury me under. I focused on myself, on the friends who became family, on mornings filled with sunlight instead of dread, on quiet afternoons where peace, not bitterness, filled the silence. And Lucas, he visits, not often, not perfectly, but he comes, not as a grandson trying to fix things, but as a man who knows he almost lost someone who loved him the most. I told him once, as we sat in silence, "You made a mistake, Lucas, but you came back." That's all I needed. Not an apology, not gifts, just his presence, just the acknowledgement that I mattered. As for my daughter, she remains silent, and maybe she always will. But I'm done waiting. Sometimes, revenge isn't about seeing your enemies fall. It's about standing tall, while they watch from a distance, knowing they no longer have the power to hurt you. And that is the sweetest victory. So, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, remember this. You don't owe them your pain. You don't owe them your forgiveness. You owe yourself peace. And that's the revenge life gives you when you finally choose yourself. Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from family. But healing isn't about waiting for them to apologize. It's about choosing to move forward, even if they never do. That's where real strength lives, in choosing peace over pain. If this story hit you somewhere deep, hit that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone close? Subscribe for more real stories of revenge, justice, and healing. And remember, sometimes living your best life is the ultimate revenge.